right, it is Thursday night. We're in Indianapolis, ready for the Final Four starting this Saturday, and it is April Fool's Day still, Tate. But unfortunately, the big news of the day, as Roy pointed out in his press conference, was not an April Fool's joke. It happened. The man who, I'm going to say it for you because I don't want you to have to pick sides as to whether Dean Smith or Roy Williams was better. He is the greatest coach in North Carolina basketball history. I understand that's a sensitive subject for Carolina fans because Dean laid the blueprint and then Roy took Dean's blueprint and ran with it. So you could argue that without Dean, there would be no Roy. I don't care. I'm a neutral observer. And from my perspective, Roy Williams is his legacy at North Carolina. His resume was eclipsed. By the time his run ended, it had eclipsed Dean Smith's run. He was the greatest coach in the history of one of the greatest programs in this country, and that's all I have to say. So what run through your emotions. I was with you at the time. The people listening were not. What was your initial reaction? What is your reaction all these hours later? Just give the people a sense of what your headspace is right now.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, you see the news, breaking news, all caps, scooped. Roy Williams has decided to step down as the coach of North Carolina. And to give a little context from, my point of view, I had heard probably, let's say 2 weeks ago, I had heard some rumblings that Roy Williams was not happy and that, there was going to be some sort of sea change. And that is why in my head I thought, okay, Roy Williams looks around at his staff and says, I got to get some help. Joe Holiday was really important to the staff. And I know a lot of people at home may say, I don't know who that is. But Joe Holiday was like Roy's best friend on the staff, left a few years ago, was kind of like moved into a more like office type of role. And then you got guys like C.B. McGrath, who leaves him and goes to UNCW. Jared Hass, who leaves to go to UAB in 2013, and then it ends up at Stanford, as we know. So you lose top assistants, guys that really were close to him, guys that he coached himself, Jared Hass and C.B. McGrath, of course. He did have Steve Robinson on staff with him. He did add guys like Sean May, who he won a championship with in 2005. But in general, I thought a sea change was coming with the staff. And, it made sense to me because North Carolina has struggled. I think that Roy Williams puts a lot of the blame on himself, as we saw in this press conference today. And from my point of view as a fan, as someone who, I understand the Roy Williams story. If I can, peel back the layers a little bit. I mean, this guy was in ninth grade in North Carolina and says, I want to be a head basketball coach someday. I want to coach high school kids basketball. And, that's very similar to my dad. That's what my dad wanted to do. So, growing up in North Carolina, basketball means a lot. It obviously means a lot to Roy Williams. And this whole kind of like day and shift in time, I think the reason why it's so jarring and sad because you bring up Dean Smith and it's like Roy was an extension of Dean, right? So, like, even if you didn't get Dean, you got a version of Dean with Roy. Mm-hmm. And the worst part, the catch-22 of it all, and I think that's why it's so sad, is that he spent his entire 18 years at North Carolina, comes back in 2003. He spends the entire time, Titus, trying to do a Dean Smith impersonation, right? Trying to be the Dean Smith of today, trying to do what Dean would do. I mean, a lot of people have WWJD, what would Jesus do? In Roy Williams' mind, it was what would Dean do? Every single day he was at North Carolina, and he tried to make Dean Smith proud every single day at North Carolina. And I know a lot of people hear that, and they're like, well, that's kind of strange. But like Roy Williams said today, he used to walk to James Naismith's grave in Lawrence, Kansas, and just look at it, and just think about the fact that this guy in 1892 created a game that was supposed to be played in the wintertime and, turned into a game that Roy Williams owes his life to. And you and I, at a certain level, owe our life to.
Yeah, of course.
And so that sort of, the gravity of a situation like that, and you peel back and see what Roy's been going through, you understand the pressure. You understand when he says in his press conference, in 1982, Dean Smith had 5 games that came down to the last shot. All 5 of those games, the shots were missed. And in Roy Williams last year, he said he had 6 of those games, and all 6, the shots were made. And he says something like that, and the way that he's saying it and framing it is like, Dean is better than me. And I wish I could be like Dean. And what you just said to open the show, I think, is something that every single Carolina fan owes Roy Williams at some level. Not to say, hey, you're better than Dean, because Roy doesn't want to hear that, obviously.
Right.
That is his mentor. That's his hero. That's the most important person to him in the coaching world and beyond, and just his world, his realm of reference. But in general, Roy Williams came to North Carolina in 2003, and it was a desolate situation. And I was 10. I knew all I knew was bad Carolina basketball, pretty much. Like, I remember Antoine Jamison, I remember Vince Carter, but you know what I really remember? Them losing to Utah. You know, and I remember Matt Darty coming in 2000. My brother went to Matt Darty's basketball camp. I was about to say I went, but I said no. I did not want to go. I went to Skip Prosser's camp instead at Wake Forest. And so, in general, like the story of Roy Williams coming to North Carolina in 2003 and then making them a perennial powerhouse is something that I think we've scoffed at and said, of course he did. And in reality, what Roy Williams did at North Carolina in 2003 and what he did in 1987, 1988 at Kansas when Larry Brown left the job, you know, with probation and all types of sanctions on the way at KU. And that was his first big head coaching experience, you know. He was set up to fail. Dean Smith goes to bat for him, says you got to hire this guy. He's the best of the best, you know, a real gem, to say the least. And all he's done, Roy Williams, in my opinion, is overachieve. And all he's done is try to, you know, daggum it, ho-hum it, act like it's no big deal, you know, play it down, be hard on himself. And what I heard today, Titus, was someone that, one, I want to give a hug. Two, I want to give the utmost, you know, thank you and gratitude for the great basketball that I was able to enjoy my entire life. And three, I just want him to be able to talk to somebody. You know what I mean? Yeah. All I could think about today was like, man, I wish that this wasn't the place where, you know, Roy Williams felt like he was apologizing to us, and we don't need an apology, Titus.
Well, look, I want to talk to you about that, because I first of all, I want to encourage you to let it all out. Obviously,
I'm letting it out. I apologize to America.
My role here is I'm just trying to steer the ship a little bit, but this is your show. This is a time for you to do most of the talking. But I watched the press conference with you, and as you said, he seemed apologetic. He mentioned that he just doesn't feel like he's the right man for the job anymore. You have kind of in the time that we've spent today talking about it, it feels like you're trying to convince yourself that you saw this coming, given that he had kissed the floor, given that he had talked about what did he say, like in one of his final press conferences, that he felt 107 years old.
Yeah.
And my question to you is, do you feel like you really did have a sense that this was or is it something that now that he has retired, you're looking back in retrospect and you're like, oh, the signs were all there. Because, you know, that's easy to do. So, like, do you in your heart of hearts feel like this was a surprise? Like, where on the surprise scale, where did this announcement land for you?
For it to be today, it was 10 of 10. You know, I'm not going to say, like, I thought that April Fool's 2021, Roy Williams is going to say, breaking news, I'm leaving North Carolina. No, I thought the writing was on the wall of we have to have a plan, right? Like, Dean Smith was, in 1993, they win the title, and he looks around to Bill Guthridge and says, you're going to be my successor. And then I wanted to be Phil Ford, you know? So, like, he knew he's probably about 4 or 5 years at that point, but he's already creating the plan in place. Roy Williams was not necessarily creating that plan in place, and that was a reason why you say, well, it's not going to happen. And also, you know, what is the Dean Smith thing we always hear, Titus? He retired too soon. That's what he said. He's like, I left too soon. I wish I could have seen, you know, Jamison and Vince Carter, those guys' careers out. And so if you're Roy and that's your mentor and you know that's the backdrop, you would assume that, you know, allegedly when he told the chancellor of North Carolina on Sunday that he was going to step down, he said, please give me take 24 hours. Think about it, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's a very Dean Smith thing to do. Like, give yourself the time to sort of marinate on it, see what it looks like to you in your head. And I think Roy Williams in general, I mean, it's one, shocking, but two, it's not. Because I'll go through the timeline of why I think it's not so shocking, because this is what you said. Now I can go back and you put the clues together. We're going to do a little Hardy Boys exercise here. So 2014, I'm a student at North Carolina. I am a journalist. I am working inside Carolina. They're in the middle of the academic, the
You have
AFAM
big
stuff.
J's in your eyes at this point.
Big J's, the Weinstein report, Titus. You're one of the few people that know what the Weinstein report is.
I read every word of the Weinstein report.
As did I.
Yes.
So you and I are
Yes.
probably the two people that ever read it, and we
Certainly
are
the two people in media.
I
That's
mean,
for sure.
absolutely. Every single other person in media saw Weinstein report and said, "Get that out of my face, Carolina. Give them the death penalty." Anyways, so I witnessed then in 2014 Roy having these moments of like the world, the shift, right? Things are changing. I got media coming at my neck. I am like trying my best to fight these battles, but these battles are beyond me. What is Twitter? What is Instagram? What are they saying about me on the message boards? All these types of things are coming up at that time. He's also bringing in 3 kids that I think were the last real class of Carolina guys, and that's Joel Berry, Theo Pinson, and Justin Jackson, the class of 2014. 3 guys that come in, McDonald's All-Americans, and they're 5 stars, but they're really 4+ stars, to be honest with you. We're guys that are going to stay 3 years.
There were 4 stars who, once they committed to Carolina, they became blue
5
blood
stars.
bump. Yeah, they got the blue blood extra star.
Like what
Yeah.
Mason Blumley and Miles, like what happened
Yeah,
to them? Like
yeah.
they commit to Duke and they're immediately
Right.
McDonald's All-Americans.
Right.
But and I'm fine with that. That has nothing to do with those kids. They're great players. And what I'm saying is that Roy Williams had this foundation. What is the Roy Williams recipe, right, Titus? We know what it looks like. I bring them in. They have this kind of raw talent, and then by their junior year, we're Ty Lawson. We're fully formed. We're Wayne Ellington. We're fully formed. We're Danny Green. We're Tyler Hansbrough. That is the recipe, and that's what 2009 was like, the pinnacle of the Roy Williams experience, right? That's perfect. In 2014, those guys do the same thing. They go to the title in 2016. Marcus Page, and Bryce Johnson, I include in that group too. They're a little bit older. They win the title. Or the 16, they lose the championship, but everyone comes back. Then they get redemption. They win the title. And I'm there in Phoenix. I see Roy that night. I see everybody's there. Danny Green, everybody's there. I mean, it's like a Carolina celebration, like everyone is. We're on cloud 9, Titus, because it's one thing to think redemption is going to happen, but when it does happen, you're like, and Virginia fans know this, you're just like, I'm euphoric. But at that moment in time, we saw like the last of a dying breed. It's like that formula was dead, and it was going to be dead because as soon as Roy got done with that team, Theo and Joel come back in 2018. Tony Bradley goes one and done, shocking to Roy. He's like, I don't understand this, but obviously Tony goes. 2019, you bring in a kid, Kobe White, who at one time is 5'9", is this kid from Wilson, North Carolina that's supposed to stay like Joel Berry 3 years.
Yeah. My understanding, like when we saw Kobe White early in his career, you had told me like not that he was a 4-year guy, but you're like, yeah, this guy's like a North Carolina legend, and like just the way you described him, I was like, oh, this is a great get for. Did he end up being a 5-star? I'm sure he did, but like
he ended up being a 5-star, but like the Kobe White example, I think was I don't want to say it's the final like kind of. I think it showed Roy Williams that like no matter what he does, no matter if you have like Kobe's father passed away. And Roy really stepped in there. They were super close, but there was no reason for Kobe to stay in college basketball, and there's no reason for Roy to convince him to stay. And Roy's entire existence in college basketball is like actually molding minds and teaching kids and wanting them to grow and get better. And the fact that you have this machine, which is the NBA, that is not only tampering with that philosophy and that tradition and those things, but like actively ruining it, and like
and then blaming it on college basketball.
Exactly, like,
and then convincing everyone in NBA media to point the finger at college basketball and say you're ruining these kids. You're making these kids go to college when literally the rule is an NBA rule, and it all falls on the NBA to fix this.
And if you have a kid like Tony Bradley or Kobe White, you have this whole world of PR and media and buzz and hype that says if you don't go, you're an idiot. Yeah. And you also have track records of one of my good friends, James Michael McAdoo, who was a top 5 pick after his freshman year. I was one of the people that was like all up in his ear about coming back. I'm like, dude, if you come back, like it's on and popping. You're getting 20. I'm doing the Walker Kessler. You're getting 25 touches a game. Yeah. Like this is your world. And he comes back and ends up not getting drafted by the time he leaves his junior year. So you have these cautionary tales also being thrown at you. And then you have guys like Kendall Marshall and Kobe White who like left early because they had to, quote unquote, but wanted to be at Carolina, wanted to stay and play at Carolina. So if you're Roy Williams, I say all this to say, if you're Roy Williams, that's what I mean by things have changed. It's not the same game that you're playing, and now you are dealing with a different type of kid, to be quite frank, like a certain type of player nowadays that has the ability to transfer immediately. Yeah. It's just a different game, and I think Roy Williams, at the end of the day, I love him, but he's an old dog, and you can't teach him new tricks, and he wants to do it the way that he thinks it's supposed to be done. Like we joke about Larry Brown, like play the right way. This is Roy Williams' version of the right way, and in his mind today, his right way does not exist, and it cannot exist in the current environment. And there's no pivot to be made. There's no adjustment to be made. It is what it is kind of thing. And I don't necessarily think that's the case. He seemed very dire and very sure of that. And I don't know if it's because
I don't think it feels to like I think Roy's being hard on himself
exactly
in that sense, because he could pivot, and it's not as drastic as he thinks it is. I think it's just there's definitely change on the horizon. I mean, for God's sakes, the Supreme Court is talking about the NCAA.
I'm not even talking about the NIL stuff. By the way.
I'm not either. I'm saying, but like you add that in, it's not any one thing. It's like you just take a step back. And
you're adding in more factors. Yeah,
the winds of change are blowing very strongly through college sports right now. We'll just put it that way. And I don't think it's a case of like Roy is ill-equipped to make a pivot and like say what you want about college basketball. Like this isn't the first time we're going through a change in college basketball and how things operate. And Roy Williams has been around for decades. He's had to make pivots along the way, and he's had to placate shoe companies along the way. Like that wasn't a thing when he probably started coaching. You know what I mean? It's like there's always been AAU culture that came up in the middle of his coaching career. Like there have been things along the way that he's had to pivot. And so I don't think, even though he's painting this as like the game has passed me by, I don't know if I can, I think it's more of a case of like, I just don't want to. I think ultimately I just don't want to make one more pivot.
For sure.
And that's his prerogative, like, I mean, hell, he's 70 years old. Like it's weird how like Coach K and Boeheim and other old heads have almost conditioned us to think that these guys are going to die on the sideline. But I don't know. For me, as a neutral observer, like obviously you're sad about it, and Carolina fans should be, and I'm sad about it in the sense of like Roy his influence on college basketball goes beyond just Carolina. But the one silver lining for me, from my perspective, is that it is very, very rare for coaches of any caliber at any level to call their shots when they want to hang it up for good. It is very, very rare. And for Dean and Roy to both do that, to have full autonomy, and in this case, in some ways maybe Roy is behaving such that this wasn't entirely his call. Like it kind of feels like he's like, I had no other choice. I'm sort of, the game is forcing me out, but it's not. I think he's just like, I'm older. I don't want to make the pivot, and there's some beauty in that, because I do think that is something that's taken for granted, that every coach who is great, who is on track for a Hall of Fame career, believes that they will call their shot when it's over. And more often than not, that's not the case. More often than not, like it gets to a point where, I mean, I don't want to call out Jim Boeheim, but at the same time, like there have been rumblings in Syracuse for like Syracuse is on the bubble every year, and there are probably a lot of Syracuse fans that are like, I don't know, man, can we? And you get like this weird situation of like, is it time for this guy to go, or should we? I mean, he is the legend. Should we keep him? Yeah. And that happens all the time. And I don't know. A lot of times, Hall of Fame guys, they either a scandal sends them packing, or they get fired, or they get the like kind of what happened to Coach Mata at Ohio State, where you get the conversation where it's like, are you sure you still want to do this? And he's like, what are you talking about? And then like it's ultimately his decision, but also it's like he was fired, but also it's just a weird murky thing. So. I don't know. In that regard, there's some sort of beauty in it, but but at the same time, it didn't really feel like that's what he wanted. Just the way he was talking, it felt like if he could snap his fingers and make things change and keep coaching, that's really what he wanted more than anything.
Yeah, I think he gave his reason, which was he said he would hang it up when the health wasn't there, right? That was the answer. But he said the only way that he would address it before that was if he did not think he was the right man for the job. And what does that mean? And I know he brought up all these basketball decisions. He brings up the Trey Jones shot from the Duke game. He did at least get a dig in to say that they did go undefeated against Duke this year. I did like that. But the big thing for me was that, and Dean's press conference was kind of like, Dean's press conference was, it's okay. Like, that was pretty much his demeanor, you know, like, it's all right. I promise you it's okay. Like, I'm going to be here. And that, I wish it was more of that. Like, I wish Roy was making jokes like, I'm not dead, like, I'm just retiring.
But it felt like he died.
Exactly.
Didn't it?
It felt like he eulogized himself. And,
yes.
And that is why, that's what I mean by, like, I want to give him a hug and I want him to, like, enjoy his life, because I think that, like, if he leaves here in this situation and takes it as a failure or takes it as, like, he didn't do right by like, that's not even the question, because look at this. I'll run through every single year. 2005, North Carolina was the best team in the country. They won the national championship. Illinois fans, I'm sorry, you got to hear this. 2008, North Carolina, not the best team in the country, but one of the best 4 teams in the country, makes the Final Four. And then Roy plays his alma mater, a school that he has such a deep affinity for, that he goes to the championship game and supports them when they win their first title since he left.
Not his alma mater, but the school.
Not his alma mater, but his obviously his alma
right.
mater is North Carolina, but like the school that gave him his first opportunity. A lot of coaches, there's a lot of pride there. And in fact, as a North Carolina fan, do you think I enjoyed seeing him wear a Kansas pendant?
Right.
No, like that's horrible. But regardless, that team could have won a national championship. 2009 is one of the greatest teams I will ever see in my lifetime, and I have such a reverence for that team and what they were able to put together, especially given the fact that what happened to them in 2008, getting blown out by Kansas in the Final Four. Roy Williams does that. 2010, one of those, like, terrible, tough years. You go to the NIT, all things go bad, all things go wrong. A lot of coaches with that kind of pride and level say, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, let's figure this out. Let's, like, complain. Let's blame everybody else. What does Roy Williams do? Brings in Kendall Marshall, brings in Harrison Barnes, brings in, makes John Henson after his freshman year, gets him to kind of buy in, not as a small forward, but as like, hey, John, you're 6'11" and have a 7'5" wingspan. You're a power forward. And that team, my freshman year, should have won a championship, in my opinion. Kendall Marshall's wrist gets broken in the NCAA tournament. We don't have a backup point guard, so Stillman White plays. But regardless, that team was prepared to win a title in 2012. 2013, you get Marcus Page and those guys. 2014, we're having fun. 2015, they lose to Wisconsin, who goes on to beat Kentucky, who's undefeated. They lose to them in the Sweet 16. 2016, we all know the Chris Jenkins shot. 2017, you win a title. 2018, you're kind of just riding off a title. 2019, you have a number 1 seed. I think a lot of people forget this. Cameron Johnson and Kobe White were a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it feels like 2017 was the last good team he had, in a lot of people's mind, like the way you would talk about it, just because that was the last team.
Which is crazy, and I've heard I saw a lot of the quote unquote haters today talking about Roy Williams and his lottery picks. Well, I don't know if you heard this, Titus, but the 7th pick and the 11th pick were Kobe White and Cam Johnson, who were both lottery picks, who were both on the 2019 Carolina team, who happened to lose to Auburn, who, if Kyle Guy doesn't hit 3 free throws, probably goes on to win the national championship. So I'm not blaming Roy Williams for that. Let me just say that. And based on today, Roy Williams blames himself for that loss. And that's my whole takeaway from this thing. I don't care what you think about Roy Williams in general, about, like, you think he's overrated or whatever, but Roy Williams is a he is everything that you want a coach to be, in my opinion, which is a teacher. Yeah. Like, you want a teacher who loves it, who wants the best for you as a human being. And if you don't understand that, then I will point you to a press conference from King Rice. Monmouth played at North Carolina a few years ago. And King Rice, after the game, is doing a press conference. And before he starts, he literally, it's about like me right now, like about to choke up, because he just says how blessed he is. He's like, I came into North Carolina a hard-headed kid that did not want to listen to anybody. I'm King Rice. Like, I'm the shit. Like you don't tell me what to do. And this guy had, Dean Smith, Roy Williams, like the Carolina family, help him mature into the man that he would become, which is one of my favorite people in the world, King Rice. And, that's a name that I would throw out there. Like, that's the kind of person that I want to be at North Carolina. Like, that's why I love Wes Miller. That's why, when names are being tossed out and things like that, it's like there's a certain type of person that has to take the North Carolina job. And, we did the Brad Stevens Emergency podcast, and a lot of people in America in the NBA circles looked at us, I think, as, we're crazy to think that someone would leave the NBA to go to a college job. And I would just like to remind you, George Karl in 2003 was going to leave the Milwaukee Bucks to take the North Carolina
Wanted to badly. Yeah. Yeah.
Was literally calling the owners and was like, please
Begging
let
them.
me out of this
Yes.
contract. Dean
Yeah.
Smith has called me, and I have to take this job. And it's
Yeah.
the best job in the world. And it did not work out, and Roy Williams comes, and thank God he did. And I love George Karl. I love Coach Karl, too. But in general, that North Carolina job is different. The North Carolina job means something. Just like, in my opinion, the IU job is different. Just like the Kansas job is different. Just like the Kentucky job is different. Just like the UCLA job, I still think is different, regardless of how that last, coaching search went.
Right.
And it worked
Right.
out perfectly in the end.
Right.
Those places have a different reverence. They have a different tradition. They are true bloods, blue bloods, whatever we joke about and call them. And so that's why the North Carolina job right now is scary, because it can go so many different ways.
But that's why what you just said is why so many people assume it's going to stay in the family.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not what Carolina fans want to hear, but that just seems to be the way these things are working right now, in part because of what you just said, that like you find yourself, maybe not so much with Carolina, but certainly Indiana fans had to do this, where you're trying to convince people that this job does matter, and there are a bunch of people, and what IU fans were going through when the job was open, and ultimately Mike Woodson got it, was like, you're trying to convince people how important basketball is, not just basketball, but like this brand of basketball in the state of Indiana, and just the idea of Hoosier hysteria. You're trying to convince this to a national audience, and the national audience is saying, you're full of it, you're delusional, that doesn't actually exist. And you reach a certain point where you're like, all right, to hell with that. Like, who cares if everyone outside of this state thinks that we're, like, all that matters is within. And so you kind of look within, and ultimately they landed on Mike Woodson. And I feel like North Carolina is the same thing. Now, North Carolina has been obviously much more successful in the last 20 years than Indiana has. So that's not as hard of a sell to, like, get a guy outside of the family, quote unquote, to buy into Carolina culture. But there is something to that. There's a reverence that you feel for North Carolina that I don't. I am a diehard college basketball fan, have been my entire life. I've watched North Carolina basketball my entire life. I appreciate I walk into the Dean Dome and my jaw drops at all this stuff in the rafters. And at the end of the day, I'm not crying when Roy Williams retires because I'm not from there. Because ultimately, I'm like, damn, that's a pretty good coach, and we're gonna miss him in the college basketball community. But all right, Final Four games on Saturday, and I move on with my life,
Yeah.
And this is something that you'll think about, you'll tell your kids about where you were. You're in Knightstown, Indiana, when you saw that Roy Williams retired. And to people that aren't from North Carolina, that is absolutely insane. They're like, why? Like, get a grip, man. Like, a dude retired. Who cares? Get over it. And you're like, and at a certain point, if you're from Carolina, you shrug your shoulders. You're like, listen, man. If it's weird to you, I can't explain it. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're not like you're just not going to get it. And I think that sort of sentiment, that vibe, and certainly Roy playing a part in, because that's what they seem to say tonight. Bubba said during the press conference tonight that Roy's definitely going to be playing a large part in naming the successor. That it feels like all signs are pointing to someone within the family, right? Like that seems to be pretty much where it has to go, whether Carolina fans want it to or not.
Yeah, I think that's what because, like, I mean, to go full circle in our conversation, when we started here, you asked me, about the what I expected, the prediction, and the problem I thought was the staff. And, well, if you're looking at hiring inside the family, where are we looking, Titus? We're looking at that staff. So, just to run through it, I mean, Steve Robinson is, been a head coach before at Florida State. Coach Rob is obviously close with Coach Roy Williams. I don't think Coach Rob is the guy. I don't think he wants to be the guy, to be honest with you. And, in fact, if he did want to be the guy, he would be the guy. Because Bill Guthridge wanted to be the guy, and he was the guy. Next up on that list, obviously, is Hubert Davis. Hubert Davis came from College Game Day. That was a big move when it happened. Everyone in the ESPN, PTI world took that move as I am basically go here to North Carolina to be the head coach in waiting.
Yeah.
And again, that all sounds great on paper. And, when the move happened, that's what I thought, Titus. I mean, I did. And I assumed that would be the case. Now, since that move has happened, I went to North Carolina. I have been around the program. I have had friends that are managers and players on the team and, know enough now to, we'll see what happens with their internal decision making. But I will say this: if Roy Williams is fully stepping away from the program and not doing a Dean Smith where he has an office every day that he goes to in the basketball office and is around, if Roy's really going to remove himself from the whole thing, then that concerns me. That worries me about hiring internally.
I guess I want to talk about that in terms of the difference between Dean and you weren't necessarily old enough probably to remember, and if you were, you weren't old enough to have like actual adult emotions when whatever your emotions were at the time when Dean retired.
I remember watching it at my house on the TV, like the press conference, but that's pretty much the extent of it. Yeah.
But there seems to be a sentiment that is like now is more. You're more lost as a fan base, or like like Roy stepping down. The writing was on the wall in the sense of he's 70 years old and not a great season last year, not a particularly great season this year. First round loss in an NCAA tournament in the history of his career. So like you saw that the end was near. You didn't think it would be this soon, and now that it's here, there does seem to be a sense of like, oh crap, what's next? That there maybe wasn't with Dean because there was Roy. Because like when Dean left, you knew that there was always like another guy who, and even though Roy didn't take over right away, you had Guthridge, and you're like, you'll ride this out. And Guthridge was a little older when he took over, and you kind of knew there was a expiration date on his tenure at North Carolina.
Bill Guthridge is by far the coolest dude ever, by the way. Just chomped ice, like was just chill as hell. Like would recruit.
Dude actually had like a nice little run. Like
oh man, I mean,
like what did he go to 2 Final Fours in 3 years or whatever it was? And then he got out.
Was like, all right, I'm out.
It's incredible. But I think there was always like we have options if you're Carolina when Dean, and now it feels like the sentiment is, shit, dude, like I guess we technically have options because we're Carolina and it's one of the best coaching jobs you can have in the world. But if we're keeping this thing in the family, like where are we going? Do we go to Wes Miller? Is he old enough? Is Hubert Davis have enough experience? Is Jerry Stackhouse the guy? I mean, look at what he's been doing at Vanderbilt. Is that really that enough to take over at North Carolina? And there seems like a sense of like no one's ready yet, and the succession plan was not ready yet, which is I guess comes back to what you said. That's why this is such a surprise, is that there's not there's not a guy that's built in, and I guess maybe that's what Kay's going through too at Duke, because like he hasn't figured that out either. And he's like, I gotta stick around until I do figure that out.
Yeah, and look, right now today, I don't think there's anyone that's probably not as upset, but like Coach K wants Roy to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you need yin and yang. Like you need the opposing force on the other side to keep you motivated to continue. And I think, Coach K, the fact that Jim Boeheim came out today to basically, I think Jim Boeheim read the writing on the wall in this Roy Williams press conference, and he said, Walker Kessler transferring broke Roy in his mind. So he came out and made a statement that said, basically, I don't know much, but I do know this. If Walker Kessler's transferring from North Carolina, that's not a good idea.
Tell the listeners, like, just for context, like who Walker Kessler is, why that matters, and like why that.
So Walker Kessler, we talked about on the show, I think, at some point. But Walker Kessler, 5-star kid, comes in from Georgia. Is supposed to be quote unquote a stretch 5 for North Carolina. Ends up becoming a benched 5 behind Garrison Brooks and Armando Bacot for most of the season. Has a few games against Florida State, the game against Florida State specifically, where he has like 20 points or so. That you see the flashes. I mean, I've been yelling at you all year how I wanted Sharp and Kessler to start over those two guys. And, I understood that it was, look, it's not Roy's way. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. Like, these are... There's a basketball decision, and then there is a Roy Williams decision. And a Roy Williams decision is Garrison Brooks is the starter, and that will not change.
Roy Williams views as a life decision, as like this is a long term. You'll learn lessons along the way.
Yes.
And whether he's right or wrong, like that's not for me to decide. But like in his mind, that's how he sees it. Is that this is
When people complain about Roy not calling timeouts, we went on Pardon My Take today, and Big Cat's doing the classic, what are we gonna do with those timeouts, Tate? And like the reason he didn't call timeouts is because he wanted the kids to learn. Like he wanted them to feel that, like to adjust on the fly, to feel what it feels like to have a team
better
going
to
fail
now in February against Boston College, so that way in March against Michigan State we can.
When they go on a 12-0 run, you're not looking around like, oh crap. You're saying, hey, we did this before, we've come back before, and that's teaching, that's coaching to me. So like these are all little nuances that are like specifically to a Dean Smith or to a Roy Williams, and in general that whole. like I mentioned, Jim Boeheim and Coach K and Walker Kessler in general, just to say that those guys are all of the same ilk. And I think that when they saw Roy leave today, they're probably just as shocked because they kind of feel like there's a little bit of a pact between them all to be here, to be the old heads of the ACC, to be the face of the ACC, and Roy's one of their guys. And, right now when you lose that at North Carolina is important to college basketball. You know what I mean? Like, let's just be honest about it. Like, ESPN needs Carolina to be good. They need to be able to say North Carolina-Duke rivalry, the score is this, and it's exactly the same amount the last 100 meetings. And they need to know that they're going to have top flight players that are going to be at North Carolina and Duke. So that whole thing, too, like, adds in another layer of this where North Carolina is almost like you're making a hire for yourself. You're making a hire for college basketball at large, and you're making a hire that signifies what you said, what the picture of the future looks like, because we know what the picture is and what it has been, which is excellence between Frank McGuire, Dean Smith, Roy Williams.
Well, let me ask you this, because one of the things that Dean and Roy certainly had in common, as you said, was the mentor, the father type figure, the educator, I take boys and I turn them into men, and Dean Smith, the famous example, Dean Smith just giving in his will, he gives all of his former players money. He's just like, you are my children, so to speak, and Roy had that too, and like that was obviously a big deal. So I guess like using Indiana as an example, because Bob Knight, he seems like a guy that had no values whatsoever to the outside world, but he was a man of certain principles, and whether you agreed with him or not, he had his principles, and one of them was he was very he followed NCAA rules. In fact, he followed all laws. Like he was a very law abiding guy. Like that was one thing he stood by. It was like if you got caught with pot, he's kicking your ass off the team if he finds it. He played no favorites. NCAA rules were broken, he's kicking your ass off the team. He's ratting out. He's firing his, like, whatever. He had a zero tolerance policy.
Yeah. This is a man that said John Wooden was a cheater. So
yeah, he called John Wooden a cheater. And he hated John Calipari. When he was at ESPN, he could not do Kentucky games because he couldn't stand
He would just
John
spend the whole
Calipari.
time going after him, yeah.
Right. Which, funny enough, Bob Knight had a zero tolerance policy, which ultimately was a zero tolerance policy that did him in. But anyway, so my point is that like that was beaten into Indiana fans' head forever. And that's part of the reason they hate Kentucky, because Kentucky has, they've been caught for NCAA violations forever. That's a tale as old as time is violations at Kentucky. And then Cal takes over, and given his past, Indiana fans were like, "Now hang on," So like that was like a virtue. It was almost like better to lose and follow the rules than to win and cheat to Indiana people, right?
Yep.
So I'm using that as an example to say that like then when Kelvin Sampson, which now now that Kelvin Sampson's in the Final Four, people want to like relitigate that situation and be like, was that really that big of a deal? And for a lot of Indiana fans, it's like, yeah, it was. Like, I don't care that he was only making a few extra phone calls. There were rules. He broke the rules. Get his ass out of here. Like, that's not what we stand for. Mm-hmm. We'll never stand for it. And like that was a virtue that Indiana fans carry with them from the Bob Knight era. So that's my long-winded way of saying, do you feel like that is something like if you hire a coach who wins a lot of basketball games? Like, I guess winning cures everything, but like, do you is that a fear do you feel within the North Carolina community that like, yeah, maybe our next guy is going to win a lot of games, or maybe we could get it, but is it going to be a guy who understands the community? Is it going to be a guy who coaches the kids and raises and is there a fear that like where college basketball is headed, that maybe there's just not a place for guys like that anymore? Maybe that's not what the head coach role is anymore.
I think that's my biggest fear, is that doesn't exist anymore. And I say that, and I sound like Roy Williams, you know what I mean? It sounds very morbid and sad, but like that's unfortunately what it has turned into, and I think that's what I'll bring it back. Everett Case, I've been talking about Everett Case with your dad all day, and Everett Case is like the Hoosier that brought basketball to Tobacco Road, and Everett Case had this tournament called the Dixie Classic, which, we can get in terms of like why it was called that. But like regardless, there was this huge tournament in the South called the Dixie Classic. Big O played in it, Oscar Robertson. Like it was always a huge tournament. But it got too big. There was too much money, and Case shut it down because he said it got too big. Like there's too much money coming in. The players are getting refs are getting paid off. Like this is too big. This is taking the purity away from basketball. AKA, get it out of my face. Mm-hmm. And I think like that purity, it's not to say that it hasn't been lost long before the current times today, but like there is like a level of I don't know what a teacher looks like today, because all I know is that every kid that's coming in that's a 5-star expects to go one and done. So like, what is he there really to be taught? I mean, nothing. He's there to basically spend 8 months on campus, be the man, and then go on and move on with his life. And then hopefully, best case scenario, it's a Zion Williamson situation or a Kobe White situation where those guys are, love the program and want to come back and want to be around. And you mentioned an outsider. Look, the first thing when this news broke, my first reaction was Hubert Davis is going to be the head coach. That's the reality of the situation. My second reaction was, I hope, and I still think it's going to happen, Bubba kind of said it tonight, which is basically Roy's going to be a part of the process, but also he has an affinity for finding head coaches and making that splash of a hire. He's an AD that is, desired around the country. He almost took the Florida job a couple years ago. So Bubba has his own pride and ego involved. There's a new chancellor that just came in, so not someone you're familiar with, that's been around North Carolina. And now the only guy who really gets the Carolina way that's around is Roy Williams, and now he's obviously stepping down. So you have this weird space. The best thing that they do have working in their favor is that Mack Brown is the head coach of the football team. Mm-hmm. Now, Mack Brown knows Carolina culture. Mack Brown knows the Carolina way, and Mack Brown, despite his age, has been able to pivot and adjust and speak to kids like they're humans and speak to them like, hey, it's gonna take a while, but I promise you, look at Dre Bly over there. I can get you to Dre Bly. Look at Julius Peppers over there. I can get you to Julius Peppers. You know what I mean? Look at Lawrence Taylor. Like, I can get you to Lawrence Taylor, but maybe not that high. You know what I mean? Like, let's like tone it back like a little bit.
But also, in a much more real sense, no one will ever be Lawrence Taylor again.
True.
But I'll do my best.
I'll do my best. And like, so Mack Brown being there is good, but Mark Few is the name that I know him and Roy are close. I love the way that Mark Few has adjusted to college basketball, which is basically to say I play FIBA basketball in college. I think that USA connection is very important. You know what I mean? And I think that like having USA basketball tied to North Carolina again would be really important. So Mark Few is kind of like the only coach you call is Mark Few in college. Coach you call and Mark Few.
That's your Brad Stevens.
Mark Few is like, because you don't want a situation where it's like, you're calling around, your Billy Donovan said no, this Calipari said no, whatever. Chris Mack says, you don't want a situation like that. You want a situation where you called one guy, you said, hey, I just want you to know that if you are interested in Carolina, we would love to have the conversation. And if not, good luck in the national championship game, coach. And I think Mark Few, I don't see why he doesn't at least take the phone call. And then from there, you see what that phone call looks like. And then the next step for me, in my opinion, is Hubert or Wes Miller. I would love for it to be Wes Miller. I think there's no chance it's Wes Miller. I would love for it to be Wes Miller. And I hope he gets a shot to interview and gets a fair shake. But if it's going to be Hubert, and I suspect it will be Hubert, I should say that, then the next play is who is our Martelli? Who is our head coach but not our head coach? Like who is the one running our program, making basketball decisions, getting things in line?
It's Roy Williams.
Who is Roy Williams, right?
Seriously. It's going to be Roy. Roy comes back and he's just the assistant.
I mean, look, if Roy Williams keeps an office like Dean Smith then I'm totally fine. But if not, then Hubert Davis, the first call is to one of my favorite people in the world. The first one and done in basketball ever, Bob McAdoo. Mm-hmm. I think you call Bob McAdoo. I think you say, hey, the PR machine loves heat culture. And there's nobody that's more heat culture than Bob McAdoo. And he's in charge of player development with the Heat. He's worked with guys like Duncan Robinson, friend of the program. He's been what people think Patrick Ewing was as far as a big man that got kind of shoehorned into a role. That's Bob McAdoo. The guy should have had more opportunities to coach in the NBA, but hasn't gotten them because he's a black man. Let's be honest about it. So let's hope that if Hubert's able to do this, first, Hubert will be the first black head coach in North Carolina, which is something that Dean Smith wanted Phil Ford to be. So, one, Roy Williams, if this man wants to check the box for I am Dean Smith and I do what Dean does, pretty good box to check in my opinion.
Right.
Especially in a state like North Carolina that is, so pivotal to, justice, to be honest with you. Like Dean Smith was arguing against the death penalty in North Carolina. That's the type of man he was, you know? That's the kind of human he was. And this is a guy who, got Charlie Scott to come to church with him, an all-white church, This is what he was about. So like if you make the move for Hubert and you make that, decision for the future, and Hubert brings in a guy like a Bob McAdoo and maybe a Rasheed Wallace and bolsters a staff, and you got guys that are, you talk about pedigree. If you got Sean May, Bob McAdoo, Rasheed Wallace, and Hubert Davis coming in your house, it's a pretty good staff. Like I mean, and I don't really look. I'm not saying I don't know what Hubert looks like as the head coach. I did watch JV games. I know guys that were on the JV team. I didn't get glowing reviews by any means as far as like a coach, but Hubert as a man is a great man, and Hubert as a human, great human, and as a family man, great family man. So like if we're gonna do Hubert Davis, if Carolina's gonna pick Hubert Davis, if Roy Williams gonna pick Hubert Davis, kudos. But just know we got to get a staff, and we got to have a great staff, and we got to have a Carolina basketball staff that is scary, right? Like I listed all those people. I'm scared thinking about those guys recruiting. If I'm Coach K, like I'm scared of Bob McAdoo going and saying, "You want to know what a one and done is, bitch? It didn't even exist when I played basketball." Like that was never even heard of. And like that, Rasheed Wallace, are you kidding me? Ball don't lie. Both teams played hard after every game. I mean, that is the kind of move that I would like to see, a big shift in who you are as a staff, who you are as a program. And it also sends a message to people around. King Rice could be a head coach candidate, right? If we want to make this type of move. But I think that's where I'm at. I think it's going to be Hubert. I think that if and when that happens, I just hope that the next domino is like this person is coming to join his staff. I will say one name that I did not throw out in that list, and someone I should throw out because I know him, Larry Brown. Larry Brown is currently in negotiations with IU. I presume that was the last I heard. But I will say Larry probably watched that press conference today. Larry is 80 years old, and Larry has learned a lot in his life. And I love Coach Brown. You know this, Titus. He's the best to me. I love him as a basketball guy. So I would love to see maybe a rekindling of a Larry Brown as a Phil Martelli with Hubert Davis, or even a Wes Miller and Larry Brown. But like you said, if Roy Williams is around, maybe he's Larry Brown, and he's assisting the program like Thad Matta's going to do at IU. I don't know.
Yeah, do you anticipate that? Do we think Roy will? He has to, right? Like what else? I mean, I get you want to retire and step away, and I guess that's the point I was making earlier about how guys almost never leave on their own terms, because ultimately what happens with great coaches is that drive that makes you such a great coach makes you unwilling to like say enough is enough, and it makes you like most guys are like, I need one more, and I always need, and then you're like, I'm not retiring until I win one more, and then you win one more and you're like, damn, this feels pretty good, I want to win another now, and they never stop, and then ultimately it's a Bob Knight situation, or it's a you just become so old that it's like, all right, we got to fire you, or like we have an uncomfortable conversation. It's like Bobby Bowden, that happened to him, right? Like it just kind of became like uncomfortable for Florida State, and they're like, what do we do here? So I guess like if Roy had it within him to like step back and be like, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, then maybe he really is like just done, and like that's it. Yeah. Like I mean I can't imagine watching North Carolina games next season and the season after, whatever, in the foreseeable future, and not seeing Roy Williams in the crowd, right? Like he's surely going to come to the games and like just be Roy and just be around and be an ambassador for the university and all that sort of stuff, right? Like I can't imagine he's just going to go disappear now.
I think that Roy Williams has a lot of friends that aren't just Carolina basketball people. Which, not to say that he won't be around Carolina basketball, but I don't think it's going to be a Dean Smith situation. And look, I would love to be wrong about that, by the way. I would love if Roy says, I want to still have an office, I still want to come in, I still want to contribute, but I do think that this is kind of a farewell of sorts. And, as you just brought that up, like what's next, weirdly enough, remember when we were in Asheville this year and we talked to Coach Williams and he was talking to Dave Odom.
Whoa.
And he was like, I want your job. He was so Dave. For people that don't know, Dave Odom, he used to coach at Wake Forest, coach Tim Duncan. He
That's crazy. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. But yeah,
I forgot about that.
It just kind of hit me. Roy Williams was sitting there while we're all kind of just like chopping it up. Coach Odom's talking to us. Roy's right behind us. And, Roy kind of just like, makes this passive comment and says, I want to get your job, coach. How do I get that job? And, Dave Odom runs the Maui Invitational. Roy Williams loves the Maui Invitational. I'm not saying Dave Odom's going to give up his job and give it to Roy Williams, but, maybe there's some sort of role like that for Roy where he can like be involved in a tournament or be involved in college basketball or basketball in general in some way that's not tied to Kansas or Carolina. I think he loves basketball, and I think he wants to just enjoy himself. I think he wants to play golf and gamble and talk some shit and just have fun, man. It's not fun. He's not having fun.
So I guess for me, what I'm scared is I've seen the last of Roy Williams.
I think you may have. I'm
not a Carolina guy, so I'm not plugged into that community, and I'm not. And is that and for a guy that is from the Midwest and lives in LA now, but still loves college basketball, is that it? Am I not going to see Roy pop up on my TV and during March Madness and do an interview here and there at least? Am I not going to see him at Carolina games waving to the crowd when they introduce him as please put your hands together at the Carolina Duke game in the Dean Dome, and they're like, ladies and gentlemen, Roy Williams, and he just stands up and waves. Is that really what? Is that it? I saw him today, and that's it.
No, I think honestly, you made a great point. I think for the Duke game next year at the Dean Dome, they'll probably bring him out, and they'll probably honor Roy Williams' court again. And that's the other part of this, and why I think it's Hubert is because the only way that you keep Roy around is to keep his staff around. And you can bolster the staff, like I said, add a Rasheed, add one of these guys, Larry Brown, Bob McAdoo, whoever it is, add someone like that, and let Roy because Hubert recruited a lot of the kids on the team right now, guys like Armando Baycott and Caleb Love, that are staying. So if that's who we're running it back with, I think that Roy comes back for the Duke game, does the whole all shucks. Probably is in a better mood than he was today. We probably play a highlight reel that's unbelievable from 05, showing Melvin Scott with the belt that said Final Four as he walks off the bus in St. Louis, and just the good times. And I think that's the saddest part of it all is that I don't want anyone to remember Roy Williams like what they saw today. I want people to remember Roy Williams shimmying into the locker room.
Dude,
I remember.
You were showing me those videos. Because we were together all day, driving around, and you're in the car, just pulling up old videos of Roy dancing in the locker room and stuff, and it made me almost emotional. I was like, man, the dude's so fun. He's so. Yeah. And videos of him coming around the corner, and he's got a new blazer on with new pair of Jordans, and then all the guys are going nuts, and that's what I mean. Is that it? We're not going to see stuff like that anymore. That sucks. I mean, that sucks because you think of a coach as, I guess that's the ultimate point. We wax poetic about college basketball all the time and how much we love college basketball, and just highlighting it because there is a rift in basketball media where NBA people are very frankly arrogant about their whole situation and think that you're brain dead if you like college basketball. So you and I take that personally and we fight against it. But that's the sort of stuff that that you get out of college basketball coaches, is that when you think of a coach, most people just think of the guy who's pulling the strings. And you're yeah, sure, I'm going to miss Greg Popovich, but what I'm really going to miss is disciplined Spurs teams, when Greg Popovich retires, and how is that really that big of a deal? And you start going through your head, and you're what I really miss is Tim Duncan, honestly. And
I was going to say, I think Greg Popovich is I don't even miss me, I missed him.
Yeah, and so that to me, and you could do the same for a lot of college coaches too. And you're do I really but the point is every so often the legendary coaches you do miss. It's not just what I'm going to miss about Roy Williams is obviously, yes, his on-court product, that the secondary fast breaks and the Carolina style of basketball, which is legendary and is unmistakable and it's so distinct that if you see a final score where North Carolina had 57 points, you're taken aback and you're oh my God.
Did they play Wisconsin?
Yeah, what the hell
Virginia?
happened? Yeah, you kind of you know Carolina basketball so well that when you're looking at a box score, which numbers to look at. You know to look at rebounds. You know to look at assists because to look at fast break point. You know just like where to go, and that'll tell you how well Roy Williams
There's a
coached that
formula.
team. Yeah, right. But what you don't always think about is all this other stuff, which you're talking about a lot tonight, his role within the community, his role as a teacher and educator, and honestly, him just being fresh as shit, coming around the corner in fresh Jordans and dabbing and like all that stuff is what makes college basketball so awesome because you can't replicate that. You can't replicate a 70-year-old man wearing fresh Jordans to every single game, and that resonates with his 19-year-old players. And they have this bond for that season that will last a lifetime. And a guy like Cole Anthony, who played in one of the worst seasons of North Carolina basketball history, is will forever and ever, the rest of his life, remember that
shout out to
season.
Cole Anthony, man. I will say, there could not have been a worse run for him in North Carolina. He has every reason to be spiteful against North Carolina. And meanwhile, I think he might be one of the loudest cheerleaders around for North Carolina. So, I mean...
And that's because that's because of Roy. And I mean, the bond you form is like Cole Anthony will fondly remember, frankly, what was like a disastrous time, in terms of wins and losses. But
just listen to Roy Williams today talk about it.
But he seems to Cole Anthony seems to be a type of guy that's like, man, I loved my time at Carolina. I loved Roy Williams. I loved everything about it. And I don't know, that's the kind of stuff that keeps bringing you and I back to this sport. And I don't know, man. That sucks because I feel like even you, not that I'm going to miss him more. Obviously, you're going to miss him more. But now that I'm talking, I'm like, oh my god, because I'm not plugged into Carolina. So you're going to go back home, and I'm sure you're going to hear stories about what Roy's up to and talk to people, and people will keep an eye on him. My people aren't keeping an eye on Roy. That might have been the last I saw of him, Tate. That might have been it.
Yeah.
I saw him today crying, and that was it. And I might not see
Roy
Williams ever again.
Williams is the new Thad Matta. You know what I mean? He's going to go just set up shop and hopefully live his best version of his life. I mean, Roy Williams has a lot of hobbies outside of basketball. I think basketball is his passion. I think teaching is right up there with his passions. And, I mean, you said it, dude. I mean, I hope that I can share videos. I hope that he is more. I hope that I am not being too negative about what he's going to do. But, I mean, just what I heard today says he needs a break.
Maybe it might have been just I don't know what I'm going to do next. I just know I don't want it to be this.
Yeah.
And I'll figure out what's next. But right now, I just kind of want to step away and go golfing or something. So let's wrap it up with this. What is it that that people, if you're the Roy Williams mouthpiece now, and you're the PR guy for Roy Williams, and you're, I don't want to eulogize the guy, I guess, because it does feel a little weird, the vibe with it all, but as someone who's watched him, and obviously he means more to you than just wins and losses and all that kind of stuff. What is something you want people to take away? What is something that a guy like me who loves college basketball but maybe didn't cry today, what is something you want me to understand as to why you cried?
Because Roy Williams represents, I think, the version of the basketball dream if you're not, a top flight player going to the NBA, right? And that's sort of what my life turned into. There was a certain, maybe 7th, 8th grade, I'm playing school ball. I'm good. I win coach's award, but I didn't win MVP. Mm-hmm. So there was a time where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be a basketball player, I'm not going to be a baseball player like I thought, because I just was burnt out from baseball, tired of traveling around all the time. It was and 9th grade, my dad was a coach. I was like, maybe I'll be a coach. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but there was a moment in time. I understand where it's coming from at some level. And then Roy Williams, the fact that this guy was a high school coach and embodied everything about teaching the game of basketball and dealing with people, and then was an assistant for free for Dean Smith, selling basketball calendars, driving around the state of North Carolina. That's how he made his salary for the season. Oh, by the way, while he was selling calendars, he found a kid by the name of Mike Jordan in Wilmington, North Carolina, and in Roy Williams' house. The first time I've ever heard of a story of a player's dad doing something illegal in favor of the coach. Roy Williams told him he couldn't take the stove. Michael Jordan's dad said, if you don't take the stove, literally you're gonna piss me off. And so Roy Williams took the wood stove, the only Jordan stove Roy said that ever existed. Mike Jordan's dad made for him. And stories like that is obviously I'm trying to give you a moment to encapsulate who Roy Williams is. And what Roy Williams represents to me is a good down home guy who's really about it, really about what he says he's about, and principles, morals, values, family, all those things that like mean something legitimately, and
still
exactly,
do
exactly,
to a lot
and
of people.
so to be able to take those values that are human values and then to be able to put them on display on a basketball court and get kids who come from different backgrounds, who come from different places, to all get into space and get to a position on the court, a role, whatever they found. They found a home. They found a family. They found a place where they could be uniquely themselves, like King Rice, who I mentioned before. And Roy Williams supplied that. And didn't just supply it at Carolina. I'm biased. I saw 18 great years, but guess what? Kansas fans right now are sitting around and saying, you wish you knew the real story. You wish you knew what Roy Williams was doing when he was young and he first came to Kansas and he had everything to prove and people said he didn't deserve the job and yada, yada, yada. Like, Roy Williams gets dismissed because he coached at Kansas and Carolina, and I just want to say that is a major glaring oversight for anyone who knows what's up, because Roy Williams is different. He is one of one. We will never see another coach be able to jump from a Kentucky to a Kansas, or a Kansas to a Carolina, or a Carolina to a Duke, or a Carolina to a UCLA. There's pretty much Larry Brown and Roy Williams. Those are the only type of people that could do something like that. Because, one, Larry Brown's a basketball genius, so he got away with it. And two, Roy Williams is a genius at life and humans and people and relationships. And that means a lot. And Dean Smith was the ultimate genius, like you said, the blueprint of it all. But the fact that Roy Williams was able to replicate it and replicate it genuinely when everyone knew he was trying to replicate it and still be able to pull it off, I mean, that says a lot. That says a lot to me, and that's what I'll remember.
Yeah. It's like if Kobe, who stole everything from Jordan, basically, like was unabashed about it, but then became better than Jordan. That's like kind of what it was. It's like you knew, like, I see what you're doing here, dude, but also like you've somehow become better. So I can't really.
It's like if Kobe won 7 titles, you know, and it's all, we're all like, I guess he is the best. You know what I mean? Like,
even though you just followed the exact same blueprint, at the same time, you did do it.
But think about how hard that blueprint was, man, because it takes character to be that. And like, there's the biggest thing we hear in college basketball is a bunch of used car salesmen. And to be honest with you, Titus, there are too many. There are way too many. And that's what makes me sad, because I want to get that world out of here. And I hope that an NIL situation, hey, maybe it does. Maybe it does help in some way. But in general, we need better teachers. We need better coaches. We need better people to be around college basketball players. That's my
because
final
we do ourselves no favors as a sport. Like, I mean, it's you know, it's not a great the college basketball does not have a great PR team. We'll put it that way. Just in general,
not at all. Not at all.
And a guy like Roy Williams is great PR for the sport, and that's what sucks, and that's why it's so devastating to lose a guy like that beyond just, you know, the magnitude of wins and losses and all that. It's just it is a bygone era of guys who just want to teach, and that's not to say he's not motivated by wins, but he's not motivated by money, but at the same time, I mean, he forfeited how much salary and gave so much to the university and all that. So I don't know, it's just it's an uphill battle, like trying to convince people that these virtues still exist in some small pockets of college basketball, and that you can still like believe in guys doing things the quote unquote right way and all that kind of stuff. And so that's what's a bummer to me. And and I'm gonna defend you, by the way, because I can feel just like through us talking, people are probably rolling their eyes talking about, like, want to bring up the Weinstein report, and I don't want to put you on the spot and make you do it, so I'll just address it. As someone who read every single word of that thing, go read it. If you haven't read it and you want to like throw shots at Roy about it, go read the damn report, because that guy comes off swimmingly in it. That guy steps in, he takes over for North Carolina, and he looks at the classes and he says, like, this is all documented. And he looks at all the classes. He's like, why the hell do most of our guys take these AFAM classes? And someone tells him, like, well, those are. He's like, no, fix that. Like, I don't want all these guys taking that same. Like, that doesn't. He didn't know they were cheating. He didn't know. Whatever. He like that. That's documented proof. Like, that whole report, there's documented proof that Roy Williams saw that there was an inordinate amount of guys, basketball players, taking this one class, and he was like, that I don't like that. That doesn't. I want my guys to be better men. Like, that's not going to help them in life, that they just take the easiest class.
Yeah,
So
and
get that out of my face. And I'm saying that as a guy that has I don't care. Like, you know me, Tate. If I felt Roy cheated, I would say everything I just said, and then I'd cap this podcast off with like, yeah, he's a cheating son of a bitch, and I love that about, like, I wouldn't care. Who cares? I don't care.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring that up because I don't want to put you in a position where you have to be a homer and defend him for that. But
but also like those same people calling out those AFAM classes are probably the same people that would argue that you need to learn about African American history. And the only reason that department was created was because George Lynch won the national championship in 1993 and basically said, Black Power, and I want to know the Black American story. And they created an entire department that was about that. And if you want to poke holes at that, be my guest in today's
go
world.
for it. Yeah.
And from the other side of it, that's how I knew, Titus, that none of those people read the Weinstein report. Because when I read it, I called my brother and said, dude, this is so great for Roy. That's literally what I said. I said, this is so great for Roy.
I read it, and I was like, because I remember when it came out, I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. I was like, I'm gonna kill Tate for this. Like, I was like, this is gonna be such good material. And then I read it, I was like, what? I was like, that Roy, am I mistaken, or did Roy like tell guys not to take these classes? That seems a little weird.
Yeah,
that's strange.
It almost felt like it was like you're like, are we sure? Are we sure this is the report? Like where's
the other? Where's the all?
Where are the other
stuff?
papers that these people are reading and they're tweeting death penalty at me? But
anyway,
look, I don't care to defend that other than
I know you don't, so I didn't want to make.
No, I appreciate you bringing it up. You're right. We got to get ahead of the haters.
Get ahead of the haters. Is there anything else we got to say? Is that all on Roy? I mean, we could go for hours, I know, but I don't want to. Belabor it. I don't want to eulogize him, as we said, but also I want to pay the respects he's deserved.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll say this: my top 5 coaches all time, John Wooden, Bob Knight. Mm-hmm. Those guys have to be in there. I understand a lot of people hear that and they're like, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
John Wooden would hate that you put Bob Knight in there, and Bob Knight would hate that you put John Wooden in there.
Look, number 3 for me, Dean Smith, and I think he's going to be ahead of Roy just because of the like we've talked about, but like that's just my personal opinion. It's okay. I worked on a documentary about Dean Smith. I learned a lot about him, and I know how great of a man he is. So like I'm just I have an affinity for him. So he's number 3 for me. He's also the winningest coach when he hung it up. So number 3, number 4 is Coach K. Obviously the winningest coach right now in college basketball. No denying Coach K and what he's been able to do. And number 5 is Roy Williams. Yeah. And that's my top 5 coaches of all time. I don't know if it'll ever change, Titus. I would love for there to be a coach that comes up and changes my mind, but I don't see it, to be honest with you. Yeah. And the fact that Roy Williams is in that top 5 in my mind, man, that's pretty impressive because there was nobody that thought that, I promise you, when he went to Kansas. And if you go back and read some of the papers that came out about that hire, there was a lot of people that did not believe in Roy Williams, and he proved a lot of haters and a lot of doubters wrong.
Over 33 seasons, this man averaged more than 27 wins per season. Over 33 seasons, he averaged 27 wins in a season. Is stunned. Is like in one season is cause for popping champagne for virtually every coach that coaches in college basketball. They would talk about that. That would be the bullet point on their resume. They'd be speaking at coaching clinics. They'd be like, yeah, in 1994, I won 27 games as a head coach.
Pete Gillen is like, I won 27 games this 1 year at Providence, yes.
I won 27 games. And they're like, wow, oh my God, you must be a hell of a coach if you can pull that off. Roy Williams averaged that, more than that. He averaged a little over 27 wins for 33 seasons. And that is factoring in his abysmal season 2 years, or last season, and this year wasn't great. It's unbelievable. It's you can't say enough about his legacy, his impact on the sport, and
let's be honest, like he made 4 Final Fours with Kansas and should have won in 2003. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's like he could have more. Like he did more. He could have won more at Carolina. And that's just how the ball bounces. And that's just like what he said today when he mentioned the Dean Smith thing. He's like, with Dean, for some reason, those shots didn't go in. But with me, they're going in, and now it's time for me to get out.
Oh, man. All right. Well, Roy, we love you. Come on the show. Come on the show. Be the third co-host.
Yeah, we need you. I need you. I need someone to console me, Roy.
I don't want Roy to be out of my life forever. So I need you to
I
come
do
on
think
show,
if we
Roy.
go to Vegas at the right time,
find
we'll
him.
be able
Yeah,
to find him. Yeah.
We'll just turn like it'll just.
He'll be at the
Coach
craps
Motti
table.
Coach Motti used to tell me that all the time, man. Like when he was when he was going through it, like towards the end there, and he could feel the heat from the fans, the boosters, the media, all that kind of stuff, and his health wasn't great. He used to pull me aside and just be like, Mark, one of these days, you're gonna be on vacation in Cancun. And you're just going to be walking on the beach. Maybe you'll have a woman with you. You're holding hands with her, and you're just walking. And off in the distance, on the shore, you'll see a man with a long beard just working on a boat. And I was like, Coach, is this Shawshank Redemption? He's like, shut up, Mark.
Coach, I've seen the movie.
I was like, Coach, I get it. You can stop now. He's like, no. You're like, you're gonna just get closer and be like, Thad? Is that him? And it's gonna be me. And you're gonna walk up to me and you're gonna be like, Coach, is that you? And I'm gonna wink at you and say, nope. It's not me, and I'm gonna ask you to keep walking, and that's gonna be it, And that's if that's what Roy has, then that would be nice. And I just hope that I see him again. I hope that I'm walking on the beach and I just see Roy, and I can. He's not gonna wink at me. He doesn't know me, but
no, you know what?
I just want to see him. I just I don't want that to be the last thing I see from Roy Williams. Is like crying.
I see it in my mind right now. Roy Williams on the beach in Maui, walking down. He's got his Hawaiian shirt on, and he's coming to tell us that we have to go to the arena right now and that we're late. And we're like, sorry, Coach.
And we're like, damn it, where's Coach Odom, man? Like, I liked him more.
Sorry, we're trying to shoot a Shawshank scene out of here again.
Oh, man. Oh, hey, we meant to do a Final Four preview, but obviously Roy changed our plans. Is there any parting thoughts on the Final Four you want to give the people?
Let's do
on the
it.
Ground in Indy, wrap it up very quickly.
Yeah, let's do it. Final Four thoughts. We'll let people know we're going to be live after the Final Four here in Indy. You and I on our YouTube channel, Titus and Tate. Everyone listening on the podcast feed, it will be there as well. We appreciate you guys. Final Four thoughts in general. For me, I think that we are setting up for the Monday night showcase that we all want and need. I think that it's Gonzaga Baylor, and I hope that Saturday proves me right. And
it's crazy.
That's all. I'm knocking on wood.
It's crazy how open people are about cheering for that.
Yeah.
Like we talked to Andy Katz today. He was on camera. He had a camera in his face. He had a microphone in his hand. And he was like, I'm cheering for Gonzaga and Baylor.
He literally said, I'm cheering. Yes.
I'm
Unbiased
cheering. I know
journalist.
I'm supposed to.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm supposed to not be, but like that's what I want to see. And it
That's
feels like
what
a lot of
we
people
all
are. And it feels like UCLA and Houston fans are like, I mean, kind of like frankly, like it would be cool if we won, but like
they already won. They already made the Final Four. You know what I mean? Like they already won.
Yeah, I'm with you. That would be awesome. It is a weird scene. We were downtown today. All the signs are up. Everything looks normal. It just is like not a lot of people there. It looks like they're waiting for the party to show up, but it's just never really gonna show up. I mean, they got like T-shirts out. They got like streets closed, by the way. Like there are certain streets blocked off and like tents set up, and it's like, Final Four. Like it's just they hit a button. It's like Indianapolis hits a button when the Final Four comes
just like
town,
pops up, like flips over.
Yeah, pops up. Yeah, just and it's set up everything. But then it's like we don't need that really this year, so that's kind of weird that it's here. But at the same time, I don't know. Maybe it is. What is today? Thursday? Today was Thursday. There's still 2 days before the game, so maybe it'll pick up here in the weekend. But weird vibes. But it's the Final Four, and it's always awesome, and I can't wait because if Gonzaga does play Baylor, it's gonna be the coolest thing ever. So
Saturday we will have real preview thoughts for the Monday Night National Championship game. Obviously, some reactions. I mean, you and I both have talked about this. We think Baylor Houston is probably the more interesting game as far as like the chance for an upset.
I'm slowly talking myself into Houston winning this, by the way, because I think they can muck it up. Baylor is by far, as a reminder, by far the best team that Houston has played all season. Not even close. The best team they played all season is Texas Tech. And that was in November. So this is really going to test Houston, but they know how to muck it up. They
are the muckers themselves.
Those guys
and UCLA, same thing. I don't think they can muck against Gonzaga. They're just, as you and I both have said, they're just too good. But I mean, look,
but it'll be fun.
Never doubt the muckers. Yeah, never
Johnny
doubt the
Juzang just play hero ball against Gonzaga. That'll be fun. So
if Johnny Juzang beats Gonzaga by himself, I will just say that is going to be like an all-time. Johnny Juzang is going to shoot to the moon as far as his stock if he knocks out Gonzaga. Let me just say.
He'll go number one. All right, that's it. Thanks to Tate. Thank you, Tate, for I don't know, giving us perspective on Roy. That was fun. That was useful. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you to the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame for hosting us today.
Yeah.
We had a great time. The Hoosiers Gym, Hinkle Field
Thank you to the
House,
Butler Bulldogs for hosting us
the
at
Butler
Hinkle.
Bulldogs. Yep. Where else did we go? We went to Basbo's Pizza. They didn't really host us that well. They just kind of waited on us like normal people do, to be honest.
We went to the
with you,
Children's Museum there at the end, saw
we
the
did,
dinosaurs
we
with the
did,
basketball.
We did.
Yeah,
So,
it was great.
Fun times in Indiana. We are going to be doing, as Tate said earlier, we are doing 3x3U on Twitter. So if you're into that, if you have basketball craving and you want something to watch, definitely watch that. It's fun, and I'm not just saying that because we're working on it. Like they didn't tell me that I have to say this, so I'm plugging it because I think it's fun, and I think
Yeah. And this is our third year now, fourth year,
third year doing it,
Yeah.
and fourth year, but third time doing it because last year didn't happen. And
That's true.
yeah, we initially signed up just for the money. We were very upfront about that. We were like, I think this is going to be kind of lame, but I'll take the money. And then we got there and we were blown away at how fun the event is. So check it out if you want. It's on Twitter. It's 3x3U. We're going to be doing that all weekend. It's going to be a ton of fun. And so that's it. We will see you guys Saturday.
Thank you, Roy Williams.
Thanks for watching Titus and Tate. For a true friend of the program experience, be sure to subscribe right here so you don't miss a moment of the action.